George Romero's original Dead trilogy has had an immeasurable impact on me. And I did videos on Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead all throughout this year. Now I'm going to focus on the second set of Dead trilogy films from George Romero. And so the first one is Land of the Dead, which came in 2005. There's only a very, very small number of films that I really look forward to. I highly, highly anticipated their release. I don't know if there's ever been a film where I guess anticipated the I'm sorry, I don't know if there's ever been a film that I've ever anticipated the release more than Land of the Dead, since it is a follow-up to my favorite series of all time, George Romero's original Dead trilogy. So after many, many years of waiting and hearing this and hearing that, rumors and all this stuff, of a fourth George Romero Dead film getting off the ground, and then finally, somewhere I think I can't remember, but it was in the earlier part of the 2000s that there was word that George Romero had a script to a fourth Dead film, and it was called at the time Dead Reckoning. And that threw me off. I'm like, oh, okay, not Twilight of the Dead, Dead Reckoning. Not anything of the dead, but okay, he wants to do something different. Maybe it has nothing to do with, his original trilogy, and that's why he's, giving it a different type of title. But yeah, there was word around. I remember, there was some websites that had, they had an early look at the script, and they were saying that it was a good script. It was a good, solid script. And, that, I thought that was really, really good to hear, and I couldn't wait till it, got made. It took a while, because I think this was maybe around 2002 or something. I mean, I can't exactly remember. It wasn't the mid-2000s quite yet, and then there was no, it might have been 2001 now that I think about it, but there was talk about the script did indeed exist, Romero confirmed it, and then there was nothing for quite some time. And then I think sometime shortly after the release of the Dawn of the Dead remake, because at this point in time there was a huge revival of what would eventually be a massive revival of zombies in pop culture. In the 2000s, you had 28 Days Later, you had the first Resident Evil film, you had Shaun of the Dead, the Dawn of the Dead remake, more Resident Evil games that were really, really popular, particularly RE4, the Walking Dead comic. There was just zombie, the zombie genre, never seen anything like this before. This gigantic explosion of popularity that I'd never seen before, and it's still continuing to this day. It's cooled down definitely from I would probably say the peak of it would be from the later half of the 2000s into the first half of the 2010s. But it's still ongoing. It's still going. There's still zombie stuff being made, games, movies. But at this point, the public at large is seemingly tired of it, even though it's still ongoing, still popular to some degree, because it's just most of it is just tired and uninspired. But that's a conversation for another day. But so shortly, I believe after the success of Dawn of the Dead remake, there was talk about the fourth Dead film from George Romero was finally happening. They got the green light from Universal, and he was going to be directing it, and it was going to come out in 2005, which was 20 years after the release of Day of the Dead. And I was beyond thrilled. Here it is news. Yes, my hero, who's created my favorite films ever, is now having another chance to, hit another home run, cinematically. And I was just super excited for it. I just remember seeing the trailer, really liking it, and seeing behind the scenes photos. There was this it was I don't want to say featurette, but it was this 30-minute or so program on IFC showing the behind the scenes of Land of the Dead. It also got me excited, and I was really, really hyped for this film, and I saw it when it eventually came out. I believe it was June of 2005, and It was the first Friday. I was there opening day, and I was there with my brother, my best friend, and a good woman who I used to date at one point. I remember going ahead and being in an auditorium, and the film was starting, and I just felt so surreal. Like after all these years of, waiting for this film, hoping for this film, and now it is finally here. Like it just felt, I don't know, I just felt like I was outside myself. Like it was just a super surreal, unreal moment that finally the fourth, Dead movie from George Romero has finally come out. It's finally materialized, and I am watching it, and yeah, it was. I was really, really into it when the film started, and I was into it from beginning to end. And even though I knew this film did not reach the incredible high heights of, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead, I was at the time, thoroughly satisfied. In fact, like I was thinking, that weekend, the movie was out like that Saturday, that Sunday, that of possibly like seeing it again, and I came super close. Like I came super close to like just walking out of my house and going in and see it again because I really liked what I saw. But for one reason or another, I didn't. So I waited until it came out on DVD, which I bought immediately when it was released, to see it for a second time. And after I watched it for the second time, I still really enjoyed what I watched, but I guess like the love wasn't quite as strong the second time around. Like I was starting to notice little cracks and stuff. I'm not exactly sure when did I start it. Like I don't know, like my enthusiasm for the film began to wane considerably. I don't know if it was with the second viewing. I think it was just over time, and it wasn't that much longer later. It wasn't like years and years, but yeah, I just was noticing with every viewing, and because I've seen it a number of times at this point, nowhere close to the original trilogy, but I've seen it quite a number of times. Easily, definitely like I'd probably say more than 10 at this point. And just watching scenes individually and just thinking about the film a lot, like yeah, like I don't know, it just doesn't hold up all that great. Like compared to the first time I saw it, like Land of the Dead is unquestionably a good movie, no question. At times, I would say, at least in moments, a really good movie. And there's definitely some greatness there, punctuated throughout the film. But as an overall experience, it is good, definitely good, but nothing more than that. I mean, it's like a million times better than the vast majority of zombie films out there. Like most of the zombie movies there that exist are just, I don't want to say terrible, but they're terribly mediocre. And to be fair, most films in general, most genres are terribly mediocre. The films out there, most films aren't particularly bad, but they're not particularly good either. And I mean like the vast majority of them, like 2 stars at best. And the zombie genre, like some of the films, like fall below that 2-star average. Like I've seen a lot of zombie films. Like it's like too many. Like I've seen so many that I begin like some of them start to blur. Like some of them, like it's just I'll be like, oh, let's say Tubi, and I'll be like, oh, because Tubi has a good wide selection of zombie films, and I'll be scrolling through the stuff, and then like I'm thinking like, okay, I've never seen that before, but then when I play it, like maybe a moment or so into it, I'm like, oh, I've seen this. That's happened to me numerous times. Like I've seen this. Like I've seen so much zombie stuff, like so much stuff on streaming, video, YouTube, just in theaters. It's just a lot of zombie stuff I've seen, and a lot of it is like terrible. It's really terrible. Some of them you give an A for effort, but like they're just not good at all. And so Land of the Dead is like light years away over most zombie films, above most zombie films. But Land of the Dead, when you compare it to like the greatest zombie films of all time, the most striking, most compelling, it falls far short. It's just, I know when you compare it to the greats of, like, Romero's own stuff, his original trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, The Beyond, Zombie 2, um, Return of the Living Dead. I could just keep going on and on and on. It just falls really, really short. And I think some of the reasons is that, well, one, like, so when Land of the Dead came out, it was like, they were saying that it was, a sequel. This was the fourth film in what was now. I mean, it was the fourth film of what was then, supposed to be the Romero zombie saga. It expanded from the Dead Trilogy to, like, the Dead saga. So it's like the fourth film in that continuity of films. And I was really, like, digging Land of Death from the beginning, but it didn't feel like, one of the drawbacks that I have for the film, like, I don't know, it just didn't feel like a sequel to Day of the Dead. It didn't feel like this was a natural follow-up to that, or a natural follow-up to the original Dead trilogy. It felt like fully its own thing, and I know some of that had to do with just the amount of time that passed between releases. 2 decades is a long time. But it's still, like, I've seen sequels, legacy sequels, whatever, that literally is like decades later, and it still feels like a natural follow-up, a natural expansion of the previous story or stories. I mean, Halloween 2018, for whatever problems I have with that film, and I do like that film, by the way, and it's like, if you go by, like, canon-wise, it's supposed to be 40 years after the original Halloween. And release-wise, of course, it is that way too, but there's been so many Halloween films in between it. Like, basically, this is supposed to be like it was like the quote-unquote true sequel, Halloween 2018. Like, disregard all the other films. This is the only true sequel to the film that came in 1978, the original movie. And even though it feels very different, looks very different for so many reasons, it still, like, from the original Halloween, it still feels like a sequel to the original Halloween. Land of the Dead does not feel like a sequel to Day of the Dead. It does not feel like a sequel in the original Dead saga / trilogy of films. It just feels so different. Yeah, you could make an argument that Dawn feels nothing like Night. Day feels nothing like Dawn. Like, each film feels so drastically and distinctly different, but there's still, like, a thread through all the films that they just feel like they're all one, like they're all in this same world. It just they all fit together. It all feels like one big cohesive story. So Night was the beginning. Night was the outbreak film. Dawn of the Dead is like the tide is beginning to turn. And, like, so it's like the pre-apocalypse film. Like, basically, Night is the outbreak film, Dawn is the apocalyptic film, and Day is the post-apocalyptic film. And Land's like, Land doesn't feel like something that would be after Day. Like, I'm not sure what would be after the post-apocalyptic, like, setting. I guess, like, a full brand new world, maybe. But it feels like Land feels like it should be placed between Dawn and Day. Like, we're now in a world where the zombies have taken over, but there's still, like, society still exists to some degree. It still hasn't fully collapsed. It hasn't collapsed in most places, but there's still, like, spots here and there where society is still ongoing and running. And if you didn't know any better, you would think that society didn't crash at all. Day of the Dead is a world where society has fully collapsed, where the zombies have not just taken over, they have practically almost fully taken over. There's barely any humans left. This is like the last vestiges of humanity. And in Land of the Dead, it's like there's still, like, some kind of financial system, because you still have the wealthy. They have all these new clothings and new items. So clearly there's, like, places outside of Fiddler's Green. That's the name of the town, the community inside Land of the Dead. Like, that are still ongoing. And there's still enough humans around where you don't feel like we're on the verge again of humanity. We know definitely, like, humanity has suffered a massive loss because people are nowhere near as plentiful, but there's people still, like, trying to enjoy games and this and that. I'm like, this feels like this should be taking place after dawn, but certainly before day. Like, things are definitely more dire than dawn in Land, but not quite as despairing as it is in day. And it just didn't make any sense. Like, what happened after day for humanity to have like I don't know, a spike of like, I don't know if hope's the right word, but a spike of like progress. Like, we're doing better now. Like a recovery. Where does recovery period came from? This was supposed to take place after day, which is full blown post apocalyptic. Few humans left, zombies everywhere. What happened between day and Land for this recovery period of some extent? It doesn't make any sense. And that's one big problem I have with Land of the Dead. Other issues I have with Land of the Dead is just, I can go on and on, but I'm going to try to keep this, not too long. But yeah, it's just like, the zombies aren't particularly, like, the makeup is fantastic. The makeup by Greg Nicotero is just like, it's amazing. It's amazing. And easily some of the best zombie makeup, since Day of the Dead. But the zombies themselves, they're not particularly threatening or scary to me. And maybe because at that point when I saw it, I was desensitized to zombies to a great degree. But yeah, it did nothing for me in terms of being dreadful. And I get that this time around, that was like the point, like with, Bub in Day of the Dead, he's not supposed to be threatening or all too threatening because you're supposed to like see the humanity within him because he's a character you're supposed to connect with emotionally. And some of the zombies you're supposed to do as well in Land of the Dead, particularly like Big Daddy, and the two people who are like two zombies that follow Big Daddy. I guess like his right hand woman and man zombies. And I know you're supposed to be feeling for them more this time around, be more empathetic and sympathetic towards them. Particularly that ending. The ending doesn't work at all if you don't feel any feelings towards them whatsoever besides, revulsion. But there's gotta be moments where they feel threatening though, even though you're supposed to like feel for them, but you're supposed to feel fear for them as well, like, or be fear of them. And I don't know, like the zombies didn't really do anything for me. And for the most part, they're not distinct in a way. I mean, most of them. I mean, some of them like Big Daddy are very much distinct. I think Big Daddy's a great character. I like Big Daddy. He's the best character easily in the movie. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know, the zombies or at large don't do anything for me. That's a problem. Like each one of the previous Dead films, the zombies did something. They inspired, they inspired dread, fear, at least at the times when I initially watched them. I mean, they still like stir up feelings of like, horror to some degree, the zombies. And they look cool, they look awesome. Even in Dawn of the Dead, when the makeup is not exactly, ideal at certain times, but I still love the look how they look in Dawn of the Dead, though. And I don't know, there's just something about the zombies in Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead. I don't know, they're just great. They're just a great presence. And I just didn't feel that significance of their presence that much in Land of the Dead, and other things like the characters, the humans. I for the most part do not care for them. I don't hate them, but they do nothing for me for the most part. This is like the first entry where the majority of them are just generic. And I don't want to go as far as say bland. That's not accurate. But yeah, generic. Like there's nothing really distinct about them. Nothing special. Nothing really compelling about them. And I think they're played by good actors. But the characters, like the writing. This is the first time Romero, wrote a bunch of characters in the Dead films, and they didn't really do much for me. With the exception of Dennis Hopper, he was really good in the movie. The best like human character in the movie, is Cholo, played by John Leguizamo. He's fantastic in the film. Robert Joy's good. I'm sorry, I don't remember the character's name right now, but everybody else is like, they're just okay. They're just fine. Right? And the previous Dead trilogy has some of my favorite characters ever. The direction by Romero is solid. It's good. but it's nothing exceptional. And like, I don't know really anything more else to say than that. Like, it was good to see Romero like have a decent budget, even though it certainly wasn't a large budget. On the, I guess on a moderate scale, it was on the lower end of things of budgets for when it was released. I think he had about 20 million or so, maybe less, to do this film, and he does, stretch out every penny. It's definitely there on screen. I like the way the film looks, but just again, it's like it's good, but it isn't great. Like it's just yeah, I don't want to really get. There's not really much more to say than that. Like it's generally good. I just wish it was more. Like in terms of shot compositions, in terms of like action sequences, like it just doesn't really stand out. It's solid, which is really good. But when you have made such a high bar of great stuff in your previous series of films, it can come across as a disappointment. Diary of the Dead. I can't recall exactly how I found out about Diary of the Dead. It definitely, like, I went on some website, and I found out about Diary of the Dead. I think it was in 2006 when I first heard about it. At that point, I think it was already in production at that point, and like it just came out of nowhere. Like just George Romero, like just like less than a year or so after the release of Land of the Dead, all of a sudden he has a new, not just a new film, but a new zombie film. Like I was shocked. It's like we had to wait 20 years between Day of the Dead and Land of the Dead, and now so suddenly and shortly we are honored to get another one. Even though it wasn't the greatest biggest fan of Land of the Dead, I still think it's a good movie, and I definitely want to see more zombie stuff from George Romero. And so I was hearing more about Diary of the Dead the following year, 2007, and by the fall of that year, it had a screen at a festival or two, and word of mouth for the film was that it was good, from the reception from the festival screenings, and it was going to be released sometime in early 2008. I heard that this film was different from Romero's previous entries, zombie films, in that this one is going to be a complete departure from, his original Dead continuity. It was going to be its own thing. Like, this was going to be the first zombie film that he did that was completely in a whole new world. They were going right back to the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, or more specifically, the first initial outbreak. So it basically was going to be like Night of the Living Dead, if Night of the Living Dead took place in 2007 or so. And it was going to go ahead and be basically the angle of this film was the internet. The internet, social media, or at least social media as it was at that point. We were going to see it through that lens, which we had never seen any zombie film before that point, from that perspective, and this was supposed to be like a group of young people, college age people, and we were going to see the beginning of this zombie epidemic through the lens of these people, and through the lens of the internet age. And I was like, wow, this is like really different from anything that I've seen from Romero before. Anyone from that point, like there was already movies and other media that was telling tales through the lens of living in the internet era. The net, which I still never seen the net. But it was like, I think the first film, like major film that starts Sandra Bullock. It was like back in 1995 that used the internet as an integral part of its story. But it wasn't like too many films like that at that point in time. Now it's like there's been multiple stuff. But back then it was still not a common thing. And yeah, like Romero was definitely like, at that point kind of ahead of his time, or at least doing the thing that was uncommon, in storytelling, being innovative and different and distinct. And yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing this film, particularly a film that was like we're starting from the beginning. So I didn't see Land of the Dead the first Friday, its first day of release, like to the public in 2008. Its commercial release, because I was in Las Vegas at the time, so I wasn't able to see it that first day, that first Friday. But I did see it that Saturday, that first Saturday, its first weekend, and it was also the first time the first time since the original Night of the Living Dead that I did not see a Romero zombie film with my brother Kevin. It was the first time. Like I saw Dawn the first time with them, Day, Night of the Living Dead, 1990, Land of the Dead. But it was the first time since the original night that I saw Romero zombie film for the first time by myself, because he already seen it the previous night, that Friday, and I saw it the next day. And the screening was pretty packed. It was pretty packed, and I didn't really know what to expect. I saw the trailer, and I thought the trailer was really interesting, and I was excited to see it. And yeah, it hooked me from the beginning. I was really into it, from beginning to end, and I really, 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 really liked it. I liked it more than Land, actually. I know that some people, I definitely, most people would not agree with that. Some might see it as a controversial take, but I did think it was, maybe, like, technically, Land is a better movie, it's a better written movie, it's a better shot movie, like, on all technical aspects, Land is a better film, but in terms of being entertaining, I did back then, and still do think that Diary of the Dead is, in terms of entertainment, the better movie. Like when I first saw it, I really, really loved. I would say I would borderline love Diary of the Dead. I don't love it now. Same thing with Land of the Dead. Like I had a really positive first experience with watching the film, but then over the years, my enthusiasm, my adoration, has, plummeted to some degree. But I still, like I said, still think it's more entertaining than Land of the Dead. And, I guess the reasons why is like, I like the concept better than Land of the Dead. Like the whole thing, like, the zombie apocalypse, in the 2000s, particularly the zombie apocalypse, like, just basically Night of the Living Dead done again, but at that time in a more modern age, and like, through, YouTube and social media, and, the digital age, the digital era, how that impacts, like, your experience with going through a catastrophe, and the ways how people could exploit it, a catastrophe, through, using the means of the internet, digital devices, and stuff like that. But also not just how it could be exploited through digital means, like a disaster, but also how a disaster can be like reported on, how information on how you can survive a disaster, can be you can also use the digital means for that, like ways how like people may not, just like how information, it can be easier to travel, can be spread a lot more efficiently through using, digital means, the internet and devices like cell phones and Wi-Fi and all that other stuff, and how basically how like any tool, it could be good or it could be bad depending on how it's used. And did I think Romero maybe do the most complex and deepest ways in showing that? Maybe, maybe not, but I think he did it in a way that was at least efficient, in the in overall grand scheme of things. I think where Romero makes a misstep though with Diary of the Dead, it's like the language he uses, and more specifically the language he uses with the young people. Like the film definitely has flaws, a lot of flaws. I can understand why people do not like Diary of the Dead. It usually is regarded as one of the worst, one of the least of all Romero zombie films. Actually, probably of all of Romero films in general, it's usually regarded one of the least. I can see why. I can easily see why. I would never argue with anybody who, you know, be overly critical of this film. I get where they're coming from. I think most people are coming from a place of good faith in regards to just, you know, disregarding this film and criticizing it. And one of the reasons that I mean, there's multiple reasons why people have a problem with this movie, and I think most of them are valid. But one reason, at least I can see, that I don't really hear said often, but it's definitely a problem that I have, is that, again, like going back to the language, like they don't feel like young people. These don't feel like college something, like early 20-year-old something age students. These sound like a much older person, a much older person, talking through them. Like the vernacular they use, these just don't sound like young people. Specifically, they don't sound like how young people would have talked, young adults would have talked in 2007. And I don't even mean even specifically like using like the most trendiest like vocabulary at the moment. I'm not even talking about in that sense. I'm just talking about and I guess maybe in sense like 2007. Yeah, I guess in that way too. But again, you want to be very careful about using really trendy words or definitions that they'll go out of style like the very next year, because then it'll make your project sound very dated. But more so, it just don't sound like young people. They don't sound like 20-somethings. They just don't. And it's like, at times, it's like kind of distracting. Just like, I don't know. Like, the dialogue sounds, I don't want to say the dialogue is cringy and awful, but it doesn't sound naturalistic. I don't know. It just even like when the older adults talking, like the dialogue doesn't sound the most naturalistic. I mean, it's often on the nose, too on the nose, brings too much attention to itself. They don't sound like real people talking. And Romero's been someone who's, was someone who was, not subtle. He's well known for, being upfront, on the nose, just like, it is what it is. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it or hide it, like, I wear my heart on my sleeves, I wear my beliefs on my sleeves and all that. I don't have a problem with that. I love Romero for that. But before, like in his best works, even when people or things or whatever, dialogue was totally, completely on the nose, it still felt real. It still felt authentic. It didn't feel contrived or forced or cringy or whatever. It worked. It was believable. Here, often at times, not all the times, but it's like, come on, like no one talks like this. No one acts like this. It's too broad. Like it borderlines. There are moments, not most of the time, but there are definitely moments in the film where it borderlines on caricature. Just how blatant the film is and not subtle, and just I don't know, like the dialogue, the characters too. It's not just the dialogue, it's the characters, the way how people act. Like it's I don't know, just tone things down a bit, just make it more realistic and authentic, and but despite those issues, I still like the movie. I still really like the movie despite those glaring issues, and I like the vibe in the movie. Like I like the more bleak vibe. Like we're returning back to like Romero's like former, like his earlier works. Because the thing about Land of the Dead, like and it's not a problem in any real way, but for me, it's just a preference thing. I prefer my zombie stuff to be more on the bleak side. And Land of the Dead is more hopeful, it's more optimistic, and there's no problem with somebody who at one time whose work was more on the darker, bleaker tip decide, you know what, I just want something hopeful for once. Like I just want to walk towards the light this one time, or even if you decide to do that permanently, like you don't have to stay in one mode or one train of thought for the rest of your life. But at the same time, though, it's like if you are a particular, group of works is known for a particular vibe and motif or whatever, and then you decide to go 180 with it, some people might not warm up to that. To me, zombie films, zombie stuff in general, zombie stories, to me work their best when they're bleak, when they're horrific, when they're dark, when they're brutal. But of course, that's not the only way to do it. You can do a zombie story any way you want, and everybody should do it the way they want, as long as the story ultimately works, and the zombies work and everything else. Do what you want. And I don't mind hope in my material, even dark material. I mean, even Day to Dead, depending how you look at it, has a hopeful outlook. But yeah, like Land of the Dead was definitely unquestionably his most hopeful zombie film, by far. And I did appreciate how he decided to go with a more bleaker, more cynical approach with Diary of the Dead. I do like, besides the vibe, like I don't know, it's just something maybe indescribable why I prefer it to Land of the Dead and why I like it, even though a lot of people dislike it or even hate it. But I also like the well, I mean, I certainly don't like the characters very much. I think that's the main characters. Well, I don't hate them. It's the same thing like Land of the Dead. They both share the same issue with like most of the characters, the main characters are just fine. Nothing special, generic. I would have to say probably the characters in Diary of the Dead are a bit annoying. A lot of the main characters, so they do things that are annoying here and there. Maybe even a cringy moment or two, where you don't see any of that in you don't see any of that in Land of the Dead. So that's a little bit, that is one area where Land of the Dead has, I mean, pretty much in other areas too, has one up over Diary of the Dead. In the case of Diary of the Dead, I actually think the supporting characters are more interesting than the main characters. Characters like Samuel, played by R.D. Reed. He's an Amish guy that the main group comes across during their journey. You also have Martin Roach, who I don't think he has a name. I mean, I've seen online he's called Stranger. Maybe that's his actual name, but yeah, and I don't think he ever had a name in the movie. And he plays the guy who, like, he and his group, they take over a warehouse for refuge after everybody else leaves their town. And like, I want to see a lot more of him. I want to see a lot more of Samuel. Like the main characters for the most part don't really do a whole lot for me. I mean, the actors, they're trying. But yeah, like if all the main characters, are probably the one I like the most is Deborah, played by Michelle Morgan. She's good, or at least as good as the material allows her to be. And Sean Roberts as Tony. But they're really held back by the script, and yeah, it's definitely script-wise in terms of characters. This is definitely one of Romero's least scripts. One issue that I have with Diary of the Dead, it's not a major issue, but I wished it was the film, like, because it was being sold as this found footage movie. Like, here's Romero, he's doing like this found footage zombie film, like using a found footage aesthetic. And when you see the movie in full, it's like, No, not really. Like, it is clear that they don't really go all the way with the found footage aspect. When you do found footage, it like at least the best ones, like Blair Witch Project or Wreck, like you take the shittiest camera and you just point and shoot. And I know in real life there's a lot more to it than that. Like there's a lot of thought that goes behind into these found footage films. They don't literally just take a camera. I mean, in the case of Blair Witch Project, they kind of did a lot of it. They did give the actors in that film, here's these cameras, and just go and do what you need to do. But it's still like a lot of thought still came to that. I mean, clearly, I mean, at least as far as I know, I don't think these things were storyboarded, but they did give the actors 3 cameras and do the best you can with it. And I'm not sure if that was the approach with Wreck, but again, it's clear some calculation went into that. But despite that, they still feel very real. Wreck and Blair Witch Project, like they feel very authentic. Like they feel like if I didn't know any better, at least in parts, I would say yes, somebody really shot this. This isn't a film. This is like actual found footage that that a non-filmmaker shot. Particularly with Blair Witch Project, that feels 100% authentic, and Wreck comes pretty close. And they're very rough around the edges and all that. And Diary of the Dead is not. Diary of the Dead clearly feels very calculated. Very much like, even the camera's not shitty. Like, it's too... And I'm not saying that somebody can't have a polished camera in a movie. Like, explains that, like, the main characters, they were going to shoot a student film, and that's why the camera's, like, at some university, and that's why the camera's better than just some, low-grade consumer camcorder or whatever, like... But, like, I don't know, like... it just looks way too polished, like the whole presentation, like the sound and everything, and the movie tries to give like this out of why this movie looks polished and smooth, because even though this is supposed to be a found footage thing, we just shot on the fly, but we want to make this a documentary. We want to make this as polished as possible. We're going to include music. We're going to add music to our found footage, like thing, to like make it feel like a horror movie, to say without saying, make it feel more cinematic. And like, if you're trying to go for the found footage approach, you don't want any music, you don't want any polished sound, you want everything to sound rough and undone or incomplete. You want no color grading, like you want it to be as raw as possible. And Diary of the Dead does not feel like that at all. It doesn't even, it may, like, aesthetically might seem to be a found footage film, but it doesn't feel like one at all. To me, there are pieces of footage in the movie that does truly feel like a found footage, authentic, presentation. But the only thing I can think right now, in terms of an entire scene, not just like a few seconds here and a few seconds there, and the scene doesn't even last that long anyway, is the scene where you have this group of, I'm not even sure who they are, but I guess some branch of law enforcement that goes into this old couple's home, and an encounter happens there. And that's the only moment where it feels like, and even then that doesn't feel fully authentic in a way that I would believe it wasn't a movie. It's clearly it's a movie, but it feels more in line with what we normally perceive found footage to be, and it's one of the most effective sequences in the whole film. But beyond that, like, it just didn't work. Like, Romero should have just shot the film in a traditional manner like he always did, because he never felt comfortable with doing the whole found footage aesthetic. And I think that's the biggest problem with the movie to me, besides the issues with the script and the characters and such. But still, despite all the things I'm saying, and I do not love this film like I used to. The older I'm getting, like, the more and more I see the movie, the more its flaws become more apparent. and all that, but I still really like this film despite, everything that's not so right with it. But again, there are things that are right with it, like I've mentioned, and the ending. I really love the ending. Like Romero always comes strong with the endings, though, no matter what. And I particularly like the last image. And I really like, and it's not just the ending, the climax I think is really well done, very tense and foreboding, and yeah. So Diary of the Dead, certainly not perfect by any stretch of imagination, but to me, like it's a good movie. I'd probably give it more positivity than deserves. But yeah, like I can't wholeheartedly recommend it though. Like Land of the Dead, I can probably say most people would enjoy it at some level. I don't know if a lot of people would enjoy Diary of the Dead, but I like it. Survival of the Dead. This film, yeah, this is the rare Romero film that I do not like. And when I mean do not like, I mean bordering on do not like at all. This film is a severe disappointment. Just, it was the only one of the Dead films that, like as soon as all the other Dead films, let's say, like came out on Blu-ray, for example, like I immediately, or at least as fast as I was able to, like, get myself a copy. Or at least as soon as they came on home video, whatever format, like I would be on it. This one, when it came out on video, I didn't care. I didn't care to get it, like, for years. And the only reason why I did eventually get myself a copy of Survival of the Dead is, in tribute to Romero after he had passed. And, his passing was really devastating to me. And I was doing all kinds of things, like, in his honor, in his memory. And one of the things I did was I told myself, I guess I should finally buy myself a copy of Survival of the Dead. And I've only watched it, I believe, once. I don't think I've watched it again. It is not a good movie, at least not in its entirety. I had let me just talk about how I first found out about Survival of the Dead. Same thing with Land of the Dead and Diary of the Dead. I found out through the internet. But this time around, I think I found out about those two films either before I started filming or during production. This was the first time, like, I heard about a Romero film, at least ones that I was aware of, after it had filmed. Like, Romero, like, on the low, had gone ahead and shot this, film, a zombie film, no less. So in the span of like 5 years, Romero had shot 3 zombie movies. Like, that was just an astounding feat, actually. Like, it was like years between night, dawn, and day, and then day and land, and then all of a sudden in the 2000s, like, boom. Like in 2004, he shot Land of the Dead. In 2006, he shot Diary, and in 2009, I'm pretty sure it was 2009, he shot Survival of the Dead, and he had already shot the zombie film, and the zombie film was supposed to be like different from all his other ones, like really, really different from his other ones, and it's supposed to be like a Western slant to it, the inspiration for this film was like, I think the movie's called The Big Country. And, it was just Romero that we have never seen Romero before, or his zombies before. And even though, I didn't think that Land and Diary were the greatest of films, but I still definitely liked them. And so, and it like Romero could have directed like 5 million like disappointing, awful zombie movies, or just movies in general. Like anytime a new Romero project was announced, I always got excited, regardless of how I felt about the product. Once I eventually had seen it, and it was announced that Survival of the Dead was coming out in the spring of 2010, and or it's March of 2010, but the March is 2010 depending is the spring. But anyway, so it was announced that Survival of the Dead was coming out early 2010, and I was definitely looking forward to seeing it. And so early 2010 came around, and Land of the Dead, out of all his films, and I guess this was like an early sign, like had the smallest by far theatrical release. Like there was definitely a good amount of hype for Land when it came out. It was opened in, I don't remember the exact number of screens, but it was like a major release. Diary of the Dead was not a major release, but like it was more like a release for like an indie movie, some cities here, some cities there. It wasn't a wide release, but still for a limited release, it was like, it was wide. Like it was definitely like, it was a prominent release for a limited release. Like you knew it was opening. There was a good amount of hype for it. Not a lot, but for that type of opening, it was. But for this, it was like virtually like Survival of the Dead. Like for someone whose name as big as Romero's, particularly when it comes to zombies, like zombies and Romero should easily grab your attention, the media's attention. I mean, Romero had an appearance after this in Call of Duty DLC. I think it's called Call of the Dead, and that was massive. Like Romero being in the video game, just his appearance. So you would think a zombie film, even one that was, and I think this might have been the lowest budgeted of his 3 zombie films in the 2000s. That I'm not sure, but still, you would think there'd be a lot more attention to it, and it was like almost nothing. Like it was surprising, but then again, I guess it was foreshadowing of, I guess maybe the quality of the film, and they, wanted to bury it. I guess like let's just get this done, let's just get this over and just move on. In fact, there are people to this day who do not know about Survival of the Dead. I'm talking about people who are into Romero, into the zombies, and they're very aware of the first 3, the original Dead trilogy. They're aware of Land of the Dead. They're even aware of Diary of the Dead, but then like people think there's only 5 movies, and I'm like, no, there's like 6 one. And we are now more than 15 years since the release of Survival of the Dead, and there's still people who don't even realize this film even exists, or people who do know about its existence but only thought it went straight to video. No, it did play in theaters, because I saw it. I was there opening weekend. It was at I think I saw it at the Village East Cinemas, actually, in Manhattan. It definitely came out in theaters, but it wasn't that many. It was like a very, very small handful, and it was only for the weekend, I believe, and that was it. Like Diary at least played for a few weeks, and was like successful enough. Diary, like this was like Survival was an outright failure. Like it was a full-on failure, and not just a failure financially. It was a failure with critics. Like Diary Dead, for all the shit that it gets, Diary of the Dead, when it came out, was successful critically. Like to this day, it still has, if I'm remembering correctly, fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Like it's barely fresh, but at least in regards to critics, it's fresh. With fans, it is rotten, but with critics, it is fresh. And definitely when it came out, it was like pretty high. Like at least for that, like horror films, like critics aren't necessarily the greatest fans of horror films. Like Roger Ebert, if I remember correctly, gave it 3 stars. Like he gave Diary Dead a higher like grade than Day to Day. I think Day to Day gave like a 1.5 stars or something. Like I find that like like I love Roger Ebert, God rest his soul, but like, oh man, some of his reviews, his choices, but yeah, like Survival of the Dead, like nobody liked this film, not critics, not fans, at least the majority of them. And yeah, this is one time like where it's justified. Like it's just I don't like it. It's not like, I'm a super Romero fan, but like, oh man, like I go all day, but I'm trying to keep this, kind of short. But um, the character, and I can't remember the character's name, but he's played by Alan Van Sprang. He made a brief appearance in Diary of the Dead, and he shows up here again as the main protagonist in Survival of the Dead. And he's decent. Like, there's nothing wrong with his acting. His acting is solid. The acting in this movie is definitely solid. Like, the acting in this movie is definitely better than the acting in Diary of the Dead. The acting in Diary of the Dead is inconsistent. It's hit and miss. Here, it definitely, I would say, is uniformly solid, but it's the same issue. Survival's the same issue that Diary has and that Land has, and that at large, the characters just aren't that interesting. They're pretty generic. They're not distinct. They're just there, They're definitely not the memorable cast of people that were in the original Dead trilogy. And I keep on mentioning the original Dead trilogy a lot, but that's because it's so fucking awesome. But yeah, like there's not one character that that stands out to me in the Survival of the Dead. I would say, yeah, that's a really cool character. Not even the supporting characters, not even an extra. Like, I don't care for any of them in any way that makes them exceptional or memorable. Like, or memorable. Like, even Diary of the Dead, like I mentioned, some supporting characters. I would have rather had followed than a main protagonist, but yeah, the characters just don't work for me. The story just doesn't work for me. I mean, conceptually should be interesting, like the whole thing of like having it set on this island, and you have these two. Yeah, you have these two families, and they've been clashing with each other for generations, and there's other plot points that could have been interesting in the film, but it's like it just ultimately isn't. And Romero doesn't really do anything special or unique or all that interesting or captivating or compelling with the material. Like, there's promise, lots of promise, but like almost no delivery. It's just, I don't know, like, and I don't like being like too critical of Romero, but it's like, yeah, this is nothing really good in this movie. Like, yeah, like I'm trying to struggle to find any type of positives. Like I said, besides the acting is solid. The zombies are just, I don't like any of the zombies in this film. Like, there's not one memorable zombie in this film in terms of the way they look and in terms of the way they. I mean, well, let me choose that. I guess there's like one zombie that's like kind of memorable with a particular character. Well, basically, like you have one of the main antagonists. She has a sister and a twin sister, and it's revealed that she's already been zombified, and she goes around. She appears here and there, like on horse or on a horse, riding a horse. I don't know if that happened more than once in the film, but yeah, like she kind of has a bit of like, okay, it's not a standard zombie. She has like kind of a, a resting look, visually resting look, but she's not in the movie very long, and they don't really do anything with her for the most part, and I don't know. Looked like they wanted her to be the next Bub in this film, like, was sympathetic, empathetic, a zombie character that that you'd be sympathetic with, empathetic with. Also like Big Daddy, but he doesn't really do anything with her to make any type of impact whatsoever. Romero, and yeah, beyond that, like the rest of the zombies, I just don't care for them. They're totally forgettable. Like, they're totally forgettable. This is the first Romero film where, like, with the exception of maybe one, the zombies are completely forgettable in like just about every way. And not only that, like the zombie kills are not good. It's this one particular zombie kill where like a zombie's head gets engulfed in flames, and the special effect for it looks absolutely horrid. Like just awful. Just it looks so awful. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and in the way how the scene was played, it was like a Looney Tune cartoons in that the character Alan Van Sprang plays. He like takes a cigar, I think, and he lights the cigar with like the zombies lit up head. Like, what the fuck am I watching? The way how it's shot and framed and just put together, it feels like something from a Looney Tunes cartoon. Like, what the fuck is this? And yes, Romero's films, you know, his zombie films have had, you know, moments of like dark humor, absurd humor. Like, you know, Dawn of the Dead has the infamous pie fighting scene. So, yeah, I don't mind moments of like really absurd silliness, but it still has to fit. It didn't feel out of place in Dawn of the Dead. And when you have like just out of nowhere bits of like dark, absurd, silly humor, it has to fit though. And it just doesn't fit. It just feels jarring and distracting and deflating. Like, it's just I don't know. Like, it's just Survival of the Dead. This is such a huge disappointment. You know, and you know, feels uncomfortable for me to say all that, but yeah, it's one of the most disappointing films I've ever seen. Like, the pacing is off. Like, it's not a boring movie, but it's often dull, and like it lacks tension. It's not foreboding. Well, like I said, in a few moments, but overall, isn't foreboding. It's suspenseful. It's just there. You know, it's just. I'm not gonna say it's pointless. There's definitely like a point to the film. There's definitely feels like there's some undercurrent of meaning. I mean, it's more than an undercurrent. Like, so I'm not gonna say it's pointless. Like, I know what Romero's trying to do with the material, and at least in regards to like getting his message across, he definitely gets his message across. But it doesn't feel like any type of real expansion of, you know, the zombie lore that he has crafted over the decades. It doesn't feel like. So I'm not gonna say the film is pointless, but it doesn't also feel like it's necessary either. And I think that's the biggest sin of the movie. Yeah, like, I could go on and on, but I just don't want to turn this in one big dump fest. You know, at least not in this. When it comes to Romero, I'd rather not do that. Because he's somebody who, you know, whose legacy I care about so much, his work I care about so much, and as a human being that I care about. But it's just, I don't know, just the ending is good though. I will say that the movie's saving grace, the one thing I can say full blown that I support and I admire, is the very ending. Like I said, Romero always comes strong with the endings, and the very ending of the film I thought was like really well done. Even though that there's a shot of the moon in the ending, which is like, yeah, that's not a real moon at all. But still, like, the imagery and all that, and the message that the ending's trying to say, like, and again, it's like basically an encapsulation of what his zombie films have always been trying to say in regards to how we are as human beings, and how messed up we can be, and just don't learn anything. So in that way, it's nearly pitch perfect, the ending. I just wish everything else that came before the ending was even on half the level that the ending is. Yeah, I just wish that, you know, George Romero had just, you know, it's a common thing with anyone. You know, you're around long enough, and your work may not have the same type of impact your later work as your earlier work has had or has. But I just wish Romero's final zombie film and his final film was just a stronger one. And that's it in regards to my thoughts on all of Romero's zombie films. Like, my thoughts in regards to like how much I liked them, how much it had an impact on me, and all that. I certainly will continue to discuss Romero's zombie movies in other ways. But yeah, I've definitely had a good time talking about Romero's zombie movies. I can talk about them forever. And yeah, just thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to my thoughts on some of the most impactful movies ever made, and just some of the most impactful movies ever made to me. And yeah, much appreciated. And I look forward to talking more about Romero. I look forward to talking more about Romero and his films. I look forward to talking about Martin, my favorite non-zombie Romero film, Creep Show, The Crazies, Night Riders, at some point in the future. Um, so yeah, until next time, y'all stay scared.